When you think about Arkansas, it's hard not to picture those amazing rivers, the Ouachita, the Saline, even Bayou Bartholomew, all these waterways winding through the landscape.
Yeah.
And then there's the Red River cutting right through West Arkansas. I mean, that river's been a super important route for, what, centuries? For everyone from, well, indigenous people to, the Europeans who came later.
Right. A lot of history there.
So today, we're taking a deep dive into these four rivers.
This can be a good one.
The Ouachita, Saline, Bayou Bartholomew, and the Red River. We want to really break down what makes them so important.
Absolutely. And we're using riversofarkansastext.pdf as our main source here. We'll be pulling out all the cool stuff about their geography, their history, all the little quirks that make each river unique.
Yeah, I'm ready to get into it. So let's just start with the Ouachita River. Even just tracing its path on a map, it seems like a pretty impressive journey.
Oh, it definitely is. So the Ouachita, it starts way up in the Ouachita Mountains near Mena. From there, it flows east. And I think what's really interesting is how it basically forms the heart of all these major lakes that we've created with dams.
Yeah.
First you've got Lake Ouachita, which is made by the Blakely Mountain Dam. Then a little further down, you hit Lake Hamilton. Everyone knows that one. It's right by Hot Springs, and that's all thanks to the Carpenter Dam. And then right below that, you've got Lake Catherine. So right from the get-go, you can see how we've kind of reshaped the river's natural flow.
That's a good point. I mean, it's not just a river flowing freely. It's a whole system that we've engineered.
Yeah.
And it picks up other rivers as it goes along, too, right?
Exactly. As the Ouachita makes its way south, it meets up with the Caddo River near Arkadelphia. And then a little further down, the Little Missouri River adds its water to the mix. And actually, the Saline River, which we'll talk about more later, is its main tributary. Yeah, and then from there, the Ouachita flows into Lake Jack Lee, which is another reservoir. This one was created by the Ouachita and Black River Project.
Yeah.
And it's right near the Louisiana border, too.
I was just going to ask about that. So that whole stretch from the Saline River down to Lake Jack Lee, it sounds like a pretty important spot for wildlife.
Oh, it is. That's where you've got the Felsenthal National Wildlife Refuge. It basically covers that whole section. It's like this protected corridor that's super important for, keeping all the different plants and animals in the area thriving.
Yeah, I see.
And then from Lake Jack Lee, the Ouachita keeps heading south into Louisiana, and eventually it joins up with the Red River. And of course, the Red River flows into the Atchafalaya and the Mississippi. It's like this giant network of waterways all connected.
Wow. It really does give you a sense of just how connected everything is. And I noticed in the source that there are locks and dams on the Ouachita. That kind of suggests that it's been used for transportation for a long time, doesn't it?
Oh, yeah, for sure. It's got 5 locks and dams along its length, including some at Camden and Kalian here in Arkansas.
Yeah.
They're kind of like remnants of this whole era when river travel was like the main way to get around.
Yeah.
And it really shaped how the communities along the river developed, too.
I bet. And speaking of history, even the name Ouachita, that has historical roots, right?
It does. The river's named after the Ouachita tribe, one of the many Native American groups who lived along its banks. You also had the Caddo, the Osage, the Tensa, Chickasaw, Choctaw, all sorts of folks. And actually, the word Ouachita, it means good hunting grounds and also sparkling silver water. It kind of gives you a glimpse into how these people saw the river.
Sparkling silver water. That's a beautiful image.
Yeah.
And it wasn't just a place to live, though, right? It was a place where civilizations developed.
Yeah, that's the cool part. There was this whole mound-building civilization that thrived along the Ouachita. The biggest mound, unfortunately, got destroyed when they built a bridge in Jonesville, Louisiana. But from what archaeologists have found, it seems like it was part of the Mississippian culture.
Oh, wow.
They were this really advanced Native American civilization before Columbus, and they're known for these huge earthen mounds. It shows they were organized, had complex beliefs, all that. And get this, these mounds were still being used as late as 1540. Hernando de Soto's expedition even saw them.
That's incredible. So we're talking about a river that's been a vital artery for centuries. And it sounds like it was just as important to the people who came later, too.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
By the 1700s, the Ouachita was this crucial route for transportation and trade, first for the European colonists, and then, American settlers, especially after the Louisiana Purchase opened up the whole area. And then in the 1830s, steamboat travel just exploded. There were regular trips going all the way from Camden to New Orleans. Imagine that, having a direct water link to a major port like New Orleans. It totally changed the region's economy.
It must have. And I'm guessing a river as important as this probably saw some action during the Civil War, too, right?
You bet. The Ouachita saw its share of skirmishes during the Civil War. There were troops moving from Mississippi into Louisiana, and they'd run into Confederate soldiers near the Black River, which is part of the Ouachita system. They even captured and destroyed a Confederate steamer at one point.
Oh, wow.
It really shows you how strategically important the river was.
Yeah. From ancient civilizations to steamboats to the Civil War, the Ouachita has seen it all. So what about today? Is it still a busy waterway?
It's not as busy as it was back in the steamboat days, but it's still used for commercial stuff, especially down south of Camden. And, it's become a really popular spot for recreation, too, especially fishing.
Oh, yeah?
You can find all sorts of fish there: black bass, white bass, bream, even rainbow trout up near the hot springs dams where the water's colder.
Rainbow trout. From
Oh,
Arkansas. I never would have guessed.
I know, right? But that cold water coming out of the dams makes a perfect spot for them. Of course, the river's facing some challenges these days, too. There's this proposed El Dorado pipeline project that's causing a lot of concern about, pollution and the river's health in the long term.
Right.
But on a positive note, there's a 22-mile stretch of the Ouachita where it meets Bayou Bartholomew that's been named a Louisiana Scenic Waterway. So they're recognizing its natural beauty, at least.
That's good to hear. So it sounds like the Ouachita is still a pretty important player, both for its history and what it offers people today. And you mentioned some of the towns along the way, too.
Oh, yeah. You've got Mena, Hot Springs, Malvern, Arkadelphia, Camden, Crossett, all in Arkansas. And then once it gets into Louisiana, there's Sterlington, Monroe, West Monroe, Columbia, Harrisonburg, Jonesville. Each of those towns has its own story, tied to the river and how they've used it. So I think for you, considering what ACN focuses on, the Ouachita is this great example of a place with tons of history, ecological importance, and all these different recreational uses all spread out across a big chunk of Arkansas and even beyond.
Absolutely. So now let's move on to the Saline River, which you said was a major part of the Ouachita system. What makes this river stand out?
Well, the Saline River is about 204 miles long, and it runs through southwest Arkansas. It's pretty different from the Ouachita, which is a lot more controlled, with the dams and all. The Saline starts in the Ouachita Mountains in Saline County, and it's actually formed by 3 different forks coming together: the Middle Fork, the Alum Fork, and the North Fork. They meet up north of Benton. And having those 3 different streams feeding into it really shapes how the river flows.
3 forks merging. That's pretty cool.
Well,
It sounds like the landscape really dictates how the Saline starts out.
yeah, exactly. The upper part of the Saline is all clear, cold water. It's got a mix of, fast-moving sections and then these calm pools. But then as you get to the middle part, the water gets a little less clear, sometimes even a bit murky, and the flow kind of changes back and forth between slow pools and then these short bursts of fast water. And then in the lower part, the Saline slows down a lot, the water gets murky, and it can get choked up with brush and fallen trees sometimes.
So it's a river that changes its personality as it goes along. So what happens after those 3 forks come together?
Well, once they merge, the Saline kind of flattens out and it winds through Grant, Cleveland, Bradley, and Ashley counties before it finally empties into the Ouachita River. And it's all within the Felsenthal National Wildlife Refuge, so it's protected. One thing that's interesting about the Saline is that it's got a gravel bottom all the way along for its whole 204 miles.
Oh, wow.
And that affects the water quality and what kind of fish can live there.
I bet. So it sounds like it flows through some pretty wild areas.
Yeah, it goes through these dense forests, and there are all sorts of animals living there: deer, mink, otters, beavers, muskrats, turkey, squirrels. It's a really beautiful natural spot.
That sounds amazing. And I bet it's a good spot for fishing, too.
Oh, yeah. The Saline is known for its fishing. People come from all over to catch smallmouth bass, largemouth bass, rock bass, spotted bass, warmouth, long ear, green sunfish, bluegills, channel catfish, crappie. It's got a little something for everyone.
Oh.
And because it's mostly undeveloped, it's a great place to just go floating and enjoy the wilderness, too.
It does sound really peaceful. And there's a historical marker somewhere along the Saline, too, right?
Yeah, there's the Jenkins Ferry Historical Monument. It's south of Sheridan, and it marks the spot where the Battle of Jenkins Ferry happened during the Civil War. There's also some picnic tables and a swimming area there so people can enjoy the history and relax a little too. So for what you're interested in, the Saline River is a cool example of a river that's still pretty natural. It's got all this natural beauty, great fishing, and even some Civil War history tied to it.
Sounds like a great place to visit.
Yeah.
Now, the third waterway we mentioned at the beginning was Bayou Bartholomew. Our source mentions it as a tributary to the Ouachita River in both Arkansas and Louisiana, and it points out that a 22-mile stretch of the Ouachita, close to its northern bank, is designated a Louisiana Scenic Waterway.
Right.
So it plays a part, but we don't have a ton of details on it in this particular source.
Yeah, that's right. Our main source doesn't really give us much about where Bayou Bartholomew starts or how long it is. But it being included here at all is important, you know? It kind of shows how connected all these waterways are and how ecologically important this whole area is. The fact that they've called that part of the Ouachita a scenic waterway, where it meets Bayou Bartholomew, tells you that Bayou Bartholomew must be a pretty special place, too, even if we don't have all the details right now.
So even without a ton of info, it helps us see the bigger picture of the Ouachita and how beautiful the area is. Now let's shift gears and talk about the Red River. This one's a major player in West Arkansas, and it's a lot bigger than the others, right?
Oh, yeah, for sure. The Red River is huge. It's one of the main tributaries of the Mississippi and the Atchafalaya rivers. It's a whopping 2,190 kilometers long, which is about 1,361 miles. And the name comes from all the red bed country in its watershed. That's like sedimentary rock with tons of iron oxide, and it makes the soil and the river look reddish.
Oh, interesting.
And it's the second largest river basin in the whole southern Great Plains. That tells you just how big it is.
Wow. And its journey from its source all the way to those other rivers is pretty long, too.
It is. It starts way up in the Texas Panhandle with two main branches, or forks. The bigger one is called the Prairie Dog Town Fork, and it's about 120 miles long. It's formed by all these little creeks that sometimes dry up. The other branch is called the North Fork. From there, the Red River heads east and basically forms the border between Texas and Oklahoma. It even makes a little bit of the border between Texas and Arkansas before it fully enters Arkansas, and then turns south near Fulton. Eventually, it ends up in Louisiana and flows into the Mississippi and Atchafalaya.
So it crosses a bunch of state lines,
Hmm.
and I'm guessing it carries a lot of water, too.
Oh, yeah. It averages over 7,000 cubic feet of water per second. That's a lot of water. And the watershed is huge, about 65,590 square miles. Most of that's in Texas and Oklahoma, but it also covers parts of Arkansas and Louisiana. You know, it's funny, even though it's this massive river, the upper part of the basin is pretty dry, and sometimes the river even dries up in places. But then the lower part flows through all these marshes and swamps, which helps keep the water level more consistent as it gets closer to the end.
So it's a river that's been shaped by all kinds of climates and landscapes.
Yeah.
What about the history of the people who lived along it?
Well, the Red River's been super important to all sorts of cultures for a long time. And the Native American groups who lived along it were really diverse because the environment changes so much along the river.
Yep.
In the eastern part, where there are lots of pine trees, you had tribes from the Candoan Confederacy. They had plenty of food and good land for farming. In the middle part, it was mostly the Wichita and the Tonkawa. They were more nomadic, you know, following the buffalo and other animals. And out west, it was the Apache until the Comanche came along in the 1700s. The river wasn't just a place to get water, it was how they traveled, traded, and shared their cultures.
It's amazing how it affected so many different ways of life. And then, of course, the Europeans came along and started changing things.
That's right. European exploration had a big impact. In 1806, Zebulon Pike tried to map the Red River, but the Spanish captured him before he could finish. Then, later on, Randolph B. Marcy explored the river more and tried to find its source. And down in Louisiana, French Creoles started settling around what's now Natchitoches Parish, even before 1800. The Cane River National Heritage Area preserves a lot of that history, with old plantations and churches built by Louisiana Creoles.
So the Red River has been a real crossroads of cultures. And I remember reading something about social tensions in the lower Red River area.
Yeah, the lower part of the river in Grant Parish, Louisiana was a pretty tense place, especially during Reconstruction after the Civil War. There were plantations and hill country, and a lot of newly freed African Americans were living there, and that's where the Colfax Massacre happened in 1873. It was a really terrible event, and it shows you how volatile things were back then with all the political conflict and racism. That's also where the White League got started. They were this paramilitary group that wanted to bring back white supremacy.
It's a reminder that the history of these rivers isn't always pretty.
Mhm.
Now, I also read about something called the Great Raft. That sounds like it was a big problem.
It was huge. Back in the early 1800s, there was this massive log jam in the Red River in Louisiana. It stretched for over 160 miles and made most of the river impassable for boats. It was a major roadblock for trade and settlement. And this Captain Henry Miller Shreve, he took on the job of clearing it out. He started in 1839, and it was a really tough job. They didn't finish until the 1870s, after they started using dynamite, which made things go a lot faster. Once they finally cleared the Great Raft, it opened up the river for more boats and changed the whole region.
That must have been an incredible project. And it probably helped the economy grow along the river, too.
Oh, definitely. Then in the 1900s, the Red River Valley Association really pushed to make the river fully navigable between Alexandria and Shreveport in Louisiana. They lobbied hard, and the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers built a system of locks and dams that lets barges go all the way up to Shreveport. That's still really important for businesses and transportation today.
It shows how much we keep trying to shape these natural resources to fit our needs. I also came across something called the Greer County debate. What was that all about?
The Greer County debate was this weird historical legal battle over where the Red River actually started. There was a mistake on a map when they drew the border, and both Texas and the federal government claimed the land between the North Fork and the Prairie Dog Town Fork. Eventually, the Supreme Court decided that the land belonged to the United States, and it became part of the Oklahoma Territory. It's funny, we usually think of the Prairie Dog Town Fork as the main part of the Red River, but the North Fork is almost as long and sometimes even carries more water.
So even rivers can have boundary disputes.
Yeah.
And it sounds like the Red River is a good place for recreation nowadays, too.
Yeah, Lake Texoma is really popular. It's a big lake formed by the Denison Dam back in 1943, and it's about 70 miles north of Dallas. People go there to boat, fish, do all sorts of stuff. And there are other reservoirs on the Red River's tributaries that help control flooding and manage the water supply. So when we look at the Red River from a West Arkansas perspective and what ACN's all about, it's this major historical waterway with interesting geography. It's played a huge role in settlements and conflicts, and it's still important today because of the navigation projects and all the recreation it offers.
I think what's really clear is that these Arkansas rivers, the Ouachita, the Saline, Bayou Bartholomew, and the Red River, there's so much more than just lines on a map. They've got these rich histories, they're constantly changing, and they've been shaped by nature and the people who have lived alongside them for centuries.
Definitely. The Ouachita, with its dams and locks, shows you how people have tried to control and use its power, but it's also got this ancient history and all the natural beauty. The Saline is like a window into a more untouched ecosystem with its forests and all the different fish. Bayou Bartholomew, even though we don't know everything about it, clearly adds to the beauty of the region. And the Red River is just this massive force crossing all these landscapes and cultures, filled with history and all these efforts to make the most of it.
So for everyone listening, if you want to understand Arkansas and the surrounding states, these rivers are a great place to start. They're all connected, both physically by the water and historically by the stories of the people who've lived along them.
It really makes you think about the long and complicated relationship we have with these rivers, from indigenous peoples using them for travel and settling along their banks, to the days of steamboats, to the challenges we face today, trying to balance protecting them with using them for our needs. Looking at this source material really shows you how important these rivers have been to West Arkansas and the whole region.
So here's something to think about as we wrap up. We've seen how people have interacted with the Ouachita, the Saline, Bayou Bartholomew, and the Red River, all the journeys, the towns and cities, the trade, the battles, the efforts to protect them. What challenges and opportunities will these rivers face in the future, especially in West Arkansas? As we move into the 21st century, how will our relationship with these amazing natural resources continue to evolve?
It's a big question, but it's an important one. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for listening, everyone.